Let me start with something that might sound almost fictional in 2026. There are people, real people, living full lives right now who have never created a single social media account. Not Facebook, not Instagram, not TikTok, not even LinkedIn. And I'm not talking about your grandparents who can't figure out how to unlock their phone. I'm talking about people your age, people in their 20s, their 30s, fully aware of what social media is, fully capable of joining, who simply chose not to. And here's the part that's going to bother you a little. They're not missing it. They're not sitting in some dark room feeling left out. Most of them will tell you with zero arrogance that they've never been happier. And when they say it, something in their voice makes you believe them. So what's going on there? What do they know that the rest of us don't? Or more honestly, what do they feel that the rest of us have learned to ignore? Let's start with something your brain does that you probably never notice. Every time you open a social media app, your nervous system enters a very specific state. It's not relaxation, it's not excitement exactly, it's something closer to a low-grade vigilance. Your brain begins scanning, comparing, measuring. Who's doing better than you? Who posted something you should react to? Whether your last post got enough attention. And all of this happens below conscious thought. You don't decide to do it. Your brain just does. Psychologists call this social monitoring. It's an ancient behavior wired into us from a time when keeping track of your social standing in a small tribe was literally a matter of survival. If you fell out of favor, you could be exiled. And exile in the ancestral environment meant death. So your brain learned to stay alert, to read microsignals, to constantly ask, am I still in? Am I still safe? Social media didn't invent that instinct. It hijacked it, and it turned a survival mechanism that was designed for groups of maybe 40 people into something that now runs 24 hours a day across an audience of thousands. Your brain was never built for that. And the people who stay off social media, I think on some level they felt that mismatch before anyone gave it a name. Here's what gets me about this. We talk about social media like it's a choice. Like joining is neutral and opting out is the statement. But if you actually look at the psychology, the opposite might be closer to the truth. Staying off social media might be the default healthy state, and joining might be the experiment. A very recent, very untested experiment that we all volunteered for without reading the terms. There's a concept in psychology called the need for external validation, and to some degree, all humans have it. We want to be seen. We want to matter to people. That's not weakness, it's wiring. But here's where it splits. For some people, that need is like a gentle hum in the background. It's there, but it doesn't drive them. For others, it's louder. It's the thing that organizes their choices, their relationships, their sense of self. And social media doesn't create that loudness, but it amplifies it in a way that makes it almost impossible to turn down. The people who avoid social media often share something subtle. It's not that they don't care what others think. That would make them something else entirely. It's that they have a stronger internal reference point. Their sense of self doesn't flicker when someone else gets more attention. Their worth doesn't rise and fall with engagement metrics. And honestly, this one surprised me too, because it's not always confidence. Sometimes it's just a deeper tolerance for being unseen. And I think that's the part most people miss. We assume that people who don't use social media are hiding, that they're anxious or antisocial or somehow afraid of the spotlight. But a lot of them aren't avoiding attention. They just don't need it in the constant, quantified, public way that platforms demand. They get their sense of belonging from smaller, older sources. A long phone call, a dinner table, a friendship that doesn't need an audience to feel real. There's a really fascinating study out of the University of Pennsylvania that tracked people's well-being after they reduced social media use to 30 minutes a day. And what they found wasn't just that people felt less anxious, they felt more like themselves. They described feeling less fragmented, less scattered, like they could hear their own thoughts again. And if limiting use did that, imagine what never starting in the first place preserves. Let me introduce you to a concept that doesn't get talked about enough. It's called identity consolidation. It's the process by which your sense of self becomes stable and internally consistent over time. You figure out what you actually believe, what you actually enjoy, what kind of life actually fits you, not what looks good, not what gets applause, but what feels genuinely right when no one is watching. Social media, by its very design, disrupts that process because every time you post, you're performing a version of yourself. And every time that version gets rewarded with likes or comments, your brain encodes it. This version of me is the one people want. And slowly, without even noticing, You start curating your identity based on feedback rather than feeling. The people who never joined, they never entered that loop. Their identity consolidated without interference. And there's something quietly powerful about that. Now, I want to be careful here, because this isn't a video telling you to delete your accounts. That would be overly simple and honestly a little preachy. Social media isn't inherently evil. It connects people. It spreads ideas. It gives a voice to communities that were invisible for decades. That's real value. What I'm interested in isn't whether social media is good or bad. I'm interested in what the people who never needed it can teach the rest of us about how we relate to ourselves. Because here's the quiet truth. The people who never joined social media aren't usually making a political statement. They're not trying to prove anything. Most of them just followed an instinct. Something in them said, "This doesn't feel right for me." And they listened. In a world where almost everyone around them was signing up, they paused. They felt the pull, and they let it pass. That takes a kind of psychological courage that we almost never talk about. The courage to be unreachable in a culture that treats availability as a virtue. The courage to not know what everyone is doing all the time, and to be okay with that gap. The courage to let your life be lived instead of performed. There's a term in behavioral psychology called the mere exposure effect. The more you're exposed to something, the more normal it feels, and the harder it becomes to imagine life without it. This is exactly what happened with social media. We were exposed to it so gradually, so constantly, that we forgot there was ever a before. We forgot that it's possible to have a full, connected, meaningful social life without a single profile. But the people who never joined, they still remember. Or rather, they never forgot. They're living proof that the before still works. That human connection doesn't require a platform. That you can be known without being visible to strangers. And I think maybe that's why their choice makes some of us uncomfortable. Not because they're doing something wrong, but because their contentment asks a question we're not sure we want to answer. Could I be okay without this? Could I be enough without the proof? Here's what I want to leave you with. You don't need to quit anything to take something from this. But maybe tonight or tomorrow or some quiet moment when you catch yourself reaching for your phone to scroll through someone else's life. Pause. Just for a second. Ask yourself what you're actually looking for. Connection? Validation? Distraction from a feeling you don't want to sit with? Because the people who never joined social media aren't superhuman. They just got honest about those questions earlier than most of us did. And the beautiful thing is, it's not too late to start asking them yourself. If this made you think, or if it named something you've been feeling but couldn't quite put words to, I'd love to hear about it. Tell me in the comments. Are you someone who's thought about stepping back? Or maybe you're one of the rare ones who never stepped in at all. Either way, your perspective matters here, and you don't need to perform it, just share it.